Good afternoon. You're very welcome to the program. You're listening to SIRAJ ZAIDI until 4 o'clock. And this is your own Apna radio broadcasting at Apna means your own broadcasting at 93.9 Dublin South FM. Yes, indeed. G we call it. Yes, and G is the same thing. But anyway, we are here until 4 o'clock, and I hope you shall be with me until the end of the show as well, because the show is today has got a little bit of news, not little bit of news, lots of news, in fact, about the world we live in and about the reason of our existence and things like that. And of course, the Ramadan is still with us in the second week now. We're moving from today onwards. So a week passed by, 3 more weeks left. And so we'll be talking about that as well. And be talking about what's going on in the globe out there in a big, bad world. Anyway, Charmaine is here to take the news from India and news of the week, which is the India week. And so therefore, Charmaine, you take it away and I will be joining you immediately after the news.
Radio 93.9 Dublin South FM. On India this week, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has arrived in Israel for a 2-day visit, his first since the war in Gaza began. Modi is expected to address Israel's parliament, the Knesset, and hold meetings with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Isaac Herzog. There is no meeting with Palestinian leaders on his schedule. The visit comes as both countries look to strengthen ties in defence, technology and trade, a relationship that has grown significantly since Modi came to power more than a decade ago. Analysts, however, say the visit will also test India's foreign policy, as it tries to balance its ties with Israel and other Middle Eastern countries. In 2017, Modi became the first Indian Prime Minister to visit Israel. The trip was widely seen as a turning point in the relationship. The two countries work closely on counter-terrorism and defence. India is also among the biggest buyers of Israeli arms. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has called Modi's visit a historical one. The bond between Israel and India is a powerful alliance between two global leaders. We are partners in innovation, security and a shared strategic vision. Together we are building an axis of nations committed to stability and progress, he wrote on X. Modi also responded by saying that India deeply values the enduring friendship with Israel, built on trust, innovation and a shared commitment to peace and progress. However, the visit comes at a time of heightened regional tensions. One key concern is US President Donald Trump's threat of military action against Iran and fears that any escalation could trigger a wider regional conflict. However, analysts say the focus of Modi's visit will firmly be on bilateral engagement, and any discussion around regional tensions will probably remain behind closed doors. This is also along expected lines because Delhi also maintains strong ties with Iran and several other countries in the Middle East. Opposition leaders have criticised the visit. Jairam Ramesh, spokesperson for the Congress Party, has condemned the trip and accused the Modi government of abandoning the Palestinian cause. Analysts say while Modi will praise the India-Israel relationship, he will also be mindful of not disturbing India's long-standing relations with those partners in the Middle East who are critical of Israel. According to an Indian Commerce Ministry official, India and the US have deferred trade talks, which were set to take place this week, as they study the implications of the US Supreme Court striking down the Donald Trump administration's global tariffs. An Indian delegation was due to travel to Washington this week to finalise the terms of an interim trade deal which was announced earlier this month. The agreement reduced US tariffs on Indian goods from 50% to 18%, even though several aspects of it remain unclear. The Supreme Court ruling has led to new uncertainties, as Trump said he would impose global tariffs of 15% on all goods coming into the US. It's not clear yet what the court ruling and the new tariffs mean for existing trade deals between the US and other countries. The new developments come after a chaotic few months for Indian exporters, who have been grappling with 50% tariffs imposed by Trump, which came into effect on the 27th of August. The duties included a penalty for buying Russian oil, which Trump had long criticised. On the 2nd of February, Trump announced the two countries had reached an interim trade agreement after a phone call with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, bringing relief to Indian markets. Under this, India promised to reduce its standard tariffs on all US industrial goods as well as several food and agricultural products, while the US agreed to lower reciprocal tariffs that apply to about 55% of Indian exports, bringing them down from 50% to 18%. But the announcement triggered some yet to be resolved questions about whether India was giving more than what it was getting, whether or not Delhi pledged to halt its purchases of Russian oil, and whether India could actually buy $500 billion of US goods over 5 years. Also upset India's farm unions, who warned that tariff cuts on US agricultural imports could undercut domestic producers. This is now being complicated by Friday's US Supreme Court ruling that Trump overstepped his authority by using the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act to impose sweeping global tariffs. It came as a major blow to the US president's second-term agenda. Uncertainties deepened over the weekend after Trump announced that he would increase global tariffs to 15%, the maximum allowed under a never-used trade law. The two sides, India and the US, have decided to defer the talks until both sides are able to study the implications of recent developments. No new date has been set yet for the visit of the delegation, which was set to leave last Sunday. Indian drug maker Dr. Reddy's Laboratories is likely to launch its generic semaglutide injection in the country in March under the brand name Obida, according to experts. Patent protection for semaglutide expires in India in March 26, triggering a rush among Indian drug makers to prepare lower-cost versions. The compound is the active ingredient in Danish drug maker Novo Nordisk's blockbuster diabetes drug Ozempic and weight loss drug Wegovy. Hyderabad-based Dr. Reddy's has applied to trademark the Obida brand and logo, a government filing showed. As semaglutide is yet to be officially launched, it would not be appropriate to refer to or publish any name as the brand name at this stage, a Dr. Reddy's spokesperson said in an email. The company did not respond to queries about whether Obida will be used to treat diabetes or weight loss. India, the world's most populous nation, has the most adults suffering from diabetes after China, according to the International Diabetes Federation. The South Asian country could have over 440 million overweight or obese people by 2050, a study published in The Lancet showed. Dr. Reddy plans to sell about 12 million injectable semaglutide pens in the first year and intends to price it competitively, potentially up to 60% below the branded product. The company has regulatory approval to manufacture and sell a generic version of Ozempic and is awaiting clearance for a generic Wegovy, the company said earlier. While Ozempic is approved for diabetes, it is widely used off-label for weight loss. And finally, an Indian director who won a BAFTA for her debut film has been winning hearts in her home country for using the global stage to speak about peace and forgiveness. Lakshmipriya Devi's Bung, a Manipuri language coming-of-age film, won the Best Children's and Family Film Award on Sunday, beating high-profile international contenders such as Zootopia 2, Lilo and Stitch, and the French sci-fi film Arco. It is the first Indian film to win a BAFTA in this category. The BAFTA win and Devi's acceptance speech brought the spotlight on both the film and her troubled homeland. The northeastern Indian state of Manipur, where ethnic tensions and violence have left more than 260 people dead and tens of thousands displaced since the summer of 23. Accepting the award from Paddington Bear, Devi described Bung as being rooted in a place that's very troubled, very much ignored and very underrepresented in India, my homeland, Manipur. And that's all from me. You have been listening to Apna Radio 93.9 Dublin South FM.
Thank you very much indeed, Charmaine. Utterly grateful to you for amazing news that you have put together today. And indeed, the highlight of the Manipur state and the movie of this lady who has been, in the news for quite some time since she made that film is commendable, to say to speak. But do the film improves or pay any, draw any attention to the politicians who are running the nation? I doubt it very much. Filmmakers do their best to make films and try to highlight the issue. That's all the artists can do. That's all the filmmakers can do. But apart from that, the politicians are busy engaging in the global affairs. Negligence is the word, and they're neglecting their own state. Mr. Modi is visiting, as you quite rightly have said in the news, to the Zionist state. We don't call it, by the way, Israeli state, because it's not a state. It's a Zionist occupied territory that has been exploiting to its brim, is the word. And the world is sucking up to it, and nobody's criticizing. And how now Mr. Modi and India is joining hands and gloves with Israel since he's taken over. Why? Because they found a so-called common enemy, Muslims, Islam, nations who are Middle Eastern nation. And that is the bone of contention. That is the discussion today. That is the big tension they're developing in the region. And since Modi came into power in the BJP-led government, he has made twice. This is the second trip that he has made, and he addressed the Knesset, the parliament of that nation, of that Zionist state. He would not. His visit has been criticized, as the news says that, by the opposition, and he would not address this kind of thing in his own parliament in India, because his own parliament is something that he should be thinking about it, rather than jumping on the the state aircraft, spending millions of worth of oil to go and land on his own. I mean, this is absurdity, because the war is looming in the region, and what he's going to do about it, he's going to talk about it, that yes, your friend is here, we are great friends, so if anything happens, we are ready to help you there, and we are ready to move in there and attack Iran and all that. But it's absurd. War, as I said, is the failure of democracy. If you call yourself a democratic nation, if you call yourself a civilized democratic nation, you protect human beings, you protect the resources, the amount of Armageddon is assembling in the Middle East right now as we speak is absurd. Is a theater of absurd is the word. And after the First World War, is the first time in the Middle East they are actually circling Iran in many directions. Well, yet Iran is standing as tall as possible and saying that it's our region, not your region. And if something happened here, if you dare to attack us, like today's news in Geneva, I don't know what's happening. And probably it'll be out soon in the media, social media, and the press. And the mother of all talks have been negotiations that's going on in Geneva between the nuclear talks and the Iranian official. Now, nuclear aside, what is your problem if Iran has got a nuclear weapon? So you have got 400 plus nuclear warheads. You're the only region in Israel is the only region in the only sort of like a country, if you call it a country, a Zionist state that has got a nuclear weapon. No other people have, and they have repeatedly Iran has said that they are opposed to the nuclear weapons. Their total intention is to develop for peaceful purposes: electricity, isotopes, medical reason, nuclear energy. No, they don't want that. So if there is a showdown, then God will help America. That's all I can say. If they would dare to make that mistake. Perhaps Sharad has got more information about this issue, and he has got several scenarios, the 8 to 10 scenario I think he has put together, that he's going to talk about it, and quite appropriately, what if? So sit back, relax, and listen to what Sharad's analysis says about this issue.
So the United States is massing forces in the Middle East, aircraft carriers, warships, fighter jets, and a consortium of countries. If Washington strikes Iran, it would be the biggest American military buildup in the region since 2003, when over 150,000 US troops invaded Iraq. But here's the real problem. If the US attacks Iran, what happens next? Nobody knows. Because the target may be predictable, but the consequences are unknown. If you see, since 1979, when the Islamic Revolution toppled the Shah regime and reshaped West Asia, every major military intervention in this region has produced second or third order effects. And these effects very few people have anticipated, like Lebanon in 1982, the Gulf War in 1991, Iraq 2003, Afghanistan, and then Syria after 2011. So war begins with plans, but they end up with surprises. For weeks, the US has increased its air and naval presence. The news is all over. And the United States already maintains roughly 30 to 50,000 troops across Middle East, spread across its bases in Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, UAE, and Jordan. The 5th Fleet sits in Bahrain, Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, and they remain to be one of the largest US facilities outside America. Some believe this is a pressure tactic, a bluff to force Tehran into a deal, similar to the maximum pressure under Trump administration 1.0 after the US withdrew, if you remember, from 2015 nuclear agreement called JCPO, Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. But if negotiations collapse and the order is given, the Middle East could change overnight. So today, the Thursday, the negotiations are going to start all over again. Let's see how it progresses. But then we should be ready with possible scenarios. So I have tried to put in some 8 possible scenarios. Some of them are optimistic, some are catastrophic. And the history suggests that in this region, escalation rarely stays contained. So the best case scenario for Washington, I would say, is there is a surgical strike and the current regime falls. So this strike actually would hit Iran's Revolutionary Guard bases, the nuclear facilities like it did last year, and the missile sites. So it is expected to have minimal civilian casualties, but the pressure would be so enormous that the regime would collapse. And then Iran would transition towards democracy. It is a democracy in a way, but Iran would transition into a proper full democracy. Now, Iran's nuclear infrastructure spans Natanz, Fordo, Arak, and Isfahan. It is hardened, dispersed, and in some cases built deep underground, as we have discovered. So Israel has already demonstrated targeted capabilities, and they have been allegedly assassinating nuclear scientists and striking facilities in covert operations over the past decade. Historically, however, there are warnings to be cautious. We got cases of Iraq and Libya. So for that matter, in 2003, the United States removed Saddam Hussein within weeks. What followed was an insurgency that killed over 4,000 American troops and hundreds of thousands of Iraqis. The disbanding of Iraq's army created space for Al-Qaeda in Iraq, which later evolved to ISIS. So we have a situation. In 2011, NATO strikes helped topple Gaddafi in Libya, and again, the regime fell. The state collapsed. Libya fractured into militias and rival government, becoming a corridor for arms and human trafficking. So stability does not follow when regimes fall. And this is the learning from scenario 1, but this is what the Americans are trying to achieve. Now the scenario 2 would be, in this model, Iran absorbs the military strike, but survives. If you see, Iranians are resilient. They have endured 8 years of brutal war with Iraq between 1980 to 88, and that conflict had killed an estimated 1 million people on both sides. It survived international isolation, oil sanctions, currency collapse, and internal unrest, including the Green Movement protest in 2009 and the nationwide protest after 2022. So like Venezuela under sanctions, the system stays intact but softens its policy. Over a period of time, Iran may reduce its militia support, scale down its nuclear ambition, and there is less domestic repression for those protesters. But here's the problem. The Islamic Republic has resisted pressure for last 47 years. So the resilience in the government is very high. The regime is strong. Sanctions have slashed oil exports, it has devalued the currency, and it has shrunk the GDP at multiple points. Yet the core power, if you see, the structure is intact. The supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, consistently framed compromise as surrender. So this is going to be a very tough scenario, but then again, we don't know. There is another scenario, which is a highly probable scenario. that Iran retaliates. Iran has spent 4 decades building a network of regional allies and proxies like Hezbollah in Lebanon, militias in Iraq, Houthis in Yemen, and of course there are elements inside Syria. In 2019, if you remember, Iranian-linked forces struck Saudi Aramco facilities in Khurasis and Abqaiq, and they were with sophisticated drones and cruise missiles. The consequence was that Saudi-Iran production temporarily fell by 5%, and there was an impact to the global supply. So this time around, there could be possible targets in Bahrain or Israeli infrastructure and Gulf oil facilities belonging to the American allies. In January 2020, after the US killed Qasem Soleimani in Baghdad, Iran launched ballistic missile to Iran bases in Iraq. And it is said that about 100 American personnels suffered injuries. So a limited retaliation could ignite regional escalation because Middle East is tightly wired and one strike rarely stays isolated. So this scenario must be playing out in the war room of US as well as in Iran. The other scenario is something of a courage, I would say, like a direct blow to the US Navy. And this scenario, the US commanders would definitely be alert. So suppose there is a swarm of attack, fast boats, Iranian drones, missile, and they are so large and overwhelming in number. Why it is possible? Because Iran has invested heavily in asymmetric warfare since observing US dominance in the 1991 Gulf War. Now, it cannot match, of course, the US naval power ship to ship. So it is preparing for mini attacks, but many of them. Therefore, even one major US warship getting damaged or sunk, the psychological impact would be enormous on the Trump government, because they are assuming that there will be no losses on their side. And they have history to prove. The US has not lost a major warship in a combat since World War II. Therefore, this shock would be devastating for the domestic opinion and of course the global market. Now, this one small strike, which is going to make a big impact. The other scenario would be, because of the Iran-US tussle, there is going to be global consequence. The Strait of Hormuz, which handles about 20% of global oil consumption and significant share of natural gas trade. Now that is going to be hampered. 17 to 20 million barrels of oil pass through it daily. So Iran has repeatedly threatened to close or put those sea mines through the strait during the period of tension, including when the Iran-Iraq war was at peak. So the so-called tanker war may disrupt the global supply chain. And this global supply chain is going to affect the oil prices, affecting all countries, the markets, and the panic in the global inflation values. So like in 1973 during the Arab oil embargo, prices quadrupled and it triggered stagflation across Western economies, and that took years to recover. Similarly, in 1990, Iraq's invasion of Kuwait caused oil prices to double within months. So Iran will suffer, but the global trade would not escape untouched. And that is where it will rally support against any US-led military intervention in Iran. The other scenario, which looks more realistic, is that the military rule in Iran is replaced by a full democracy, but then the history has taught us something else. So the regime would get weakened. People of Iran would say that the leadership needs to change. But then over a period of time, the Revolutionary Guard tightens control. There it goes. Iran would have a military-dominated government. So if that happens, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, controls the significant segment of Iran's economy, from construction to telecom. It also commands the elite forces, of course, the weaponry, and the Quds forces operate regionally. So they are in complete control. Now, why this scenario looks probable or realistic? Because if you remember, 2011 in Egypt, a revolution removed Hosni Mubarak. And then elections were held. But then within 2 years, the military reasserted control under Abdel Sisi. Now, mirror situation happens in Iran also, because IRGC, the Revolutionary Guards, are embedded deep in the Iran security architecture, and they have the power, the weapons, and the institutional loyalty. So if chaos follows the US strikes, they may step in, not to create democracy, but to consolidate power, to fill the vacuum of the leadership. The other scenario is that the regime collapses completely. There is regional chaos, and this is going to be really dangerous. And no country, no global situation is really prepared for this. Because what will happen is then, without a regime, without a control, because Iran is a composition of ethnic divisions like the Kurds, the Baloches, Arabs, Azeris, Persians, the armed factions will start to have infighting. There will be regional rivalries. And of course, it has borders with Iraq, Turkey, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and of course, the Gulf monarchies. It also influences Lebanon, Syria, and Yemen. So the reference is again to Syria, where it descended into a civil war after 2011. And about 500,000 people died, and 6 million people became refugees. The consequences were not only in Syria. Europe too felt the political consequences up to this date. So it has been now 15 years roughly. Europe is facing the consequences of disruption in Syria. Now Iran has over 90 million people, and a power vacuum would resemble both Syria or Libya, but of a larger scale. The refugees would start coming into Europe. There would be civil war, and this regional instability is going to hurt the oil, is going to hurt the Middle East, is going to hurt the security of the Middle East. The last and the best scenario that everybody is looking for is that Iran and US comes to an agreeable, peaceful plan where the sovereignty of Iran is honored, the might of US is respected. Both countries decide on a long-term, peaceful, negotiated plan about the nuclear deal, and the region can stay in a stability of economics, of oil supplies, of economic growth. The mistake that US is doing is the same mistake that the West did after World War I. They put all the blame on Germany and made Germany poor. This strategy of strangulating Iran into poverty is not going to work. The strategy should be that people of Iran, the regime of Iran, is able to sustain itself economically as well as by security. And that will create a sense of cooperation in the region. So the greatest danger today is not simply whether the US strikes Iran. It is that once force is used by United States, escalation would become really difficult to control. So we have to look for a peaceful option that we just spoke towards the end. In 2003, by the American planning and by American standards, they predicted that Iraq would transform into a democratic model, but it has not been so. It has become a protracted insurgency. So if the war begins without a clear end state, the Middle East, the global market, would certainly face years of instability. Targets, like I said, is predictable, but the retaliation across the world over the period of time is going to be unpredictable. And there is going to be a chain reaction which no modeling, no war room will be able to create and simulate. And it is bound to fail, leading to only human misery, not only in Iran, but in Middle East. And there is going to be a heat wave of that in Europe. So those were the scenarios we just spoke about. I hope peace returns in the negotiation, which is going to start today, the Thursday. And with that hope, I leave you until next week. Stay safe, stay informed, and dutifully ask questions. At the end of the day, somebody has to stand up. Bye for now.
Dublin South FM. You wouldn't buy a car without knowing its history. So why would you buy a story without knowing who's telling it? Come here and I tell you. It's not always easy to verify what you see, read, or hear. But now there's help. Visit www.bemediasmart.ie. Stop, think, check. Be Media Smart. Brought to you by Media Literacy Ireland, supported by RTE. 93.9 Dublin South FM.
Indeed, welcome back to the programme, and this is beautiful analysis by Sharad Awasthi, our London correspondent, who is basically has done a great amount of homework, but with a few correction that if you allow me to actually highlight it. First of all, Iran is not like Egypt, whereby, or any other Middle Eastern power, where the democracy, so-called power, is tied in with so-called the kind of Western-style democracies. It is a democracy with the concept of Vilayat-e-Faqih. Now, what is Vilayat-e-Faqih? Vilayat-e-Faqih is the supreme leader, is a jurist of the nation. It has underneath the entire parliament, president, ministers, and so on and so forth. So there is a difference between the regime structure and they have a problem with that. The worst, in fact, the world does not understand that Vilayat-e-Faqih concept, and because it's a concept of the old Islamic values governed by the Imam Ali, the grandson of not the grandson, the son-in-law of Prophet Muhammad, who married to Prophet Muhammad's daughter, and indeed for 4 years of his reign, during the early days of this Islamic establishment in the world, established this system of Vilayat-e-Faqih. So this is the module that Iran is actually operating under since 1979, since the Islamic Revolution has happened. Now, this revolution is unlike any other Chinese revolution, unlike any other, Russian revolution or any other revolution. You quite rightly has said 1 million people have actually been slaughtered, during the time of revolution, and there was an attempt was made to choke the nation right up to the birth of this independence and this thrown away of Shah's regime. Now, that and they sustained not 8 years war, 11 years of war. 11 years of war. They've learned hard way how to strategically, and thank God that they have wealth of oil wealth, gas wealth, and recently people are talking about the discovery of the gold. 800 trillion worth of gold has been discovered in Iran, and that is also will take care of the war if that war happens and they sustain for as long as they win the situation. So it's a scenario is completely absurd in the sense that if they dare to think about it, of creating a war and attacking Iran, the reply would be so devastating to not only to the regional forces, the American forces in the region and the naval ships and all that, but entire region will be set ablaze. Now, that's not in the interest of anybody. That's not in the interest of the world. Oil supply will be disrupted. The people in the oil market will insanely go berserk because of the 20 to 25% of the Strait of Hormuz. They are fully controlling the passage there. So strategically, it's not an American region. It's an Iranian nation, and it's an Iranian region. They know the region better than anybody else. Now, apart from that, the giants like Russia and China are not going to sit quietly and knuckle under. They are going to move in. They have already said that the drill has happened between Chinese naval navy ship and the Iranian ship. So China and Russia will step in to protect their friend. So is the connection with Mr. Modi has now aligning himself with Netanyahu to say that, we are the friends now. What a beautiful friends we have. And recent arrival yesterday when he arrives, and the hug and the body language of these two leaders, Netanyahu and Modi, has been showing that they are up to something. What he'll be leaning towards the Indian Navy, Indian aircraft, Indian territories, Arabian Sea, all of that will be at the disposal of the Americans or the Israelis against Iran. If that happens, we will be the foolest of the foolish people to, get involved and dirty our hands in that particular conflict. Because it's not going to be the conflict of it for quick surgical strike and out. That is not going to happen this year. This year is going to be the long haul, and the enemy, so-called the America and the Israelis, will learn their bitter lesson by not only losing the billions and trillions of dollars of investment in weaponry, but also in manpower and soldiers and all the rest of it. So the scenario is nightmare scenario, and it could lead into a third world war, because war in Europe is not coming to an end. I mean, as of yesterday, Mr. Putin is actually keep attacking the Donetsk region and the Ukrainians in the region, and destroying the the powerhouse and the electricity generators and things like that. So, I mean, yes, the war here in Europe is a big issue. It's already happening. 4 years have gone. Do you know that? 4 years have been gone. That this war is happening and is affecting European economy. It will affect more because the Ursula von der Leyen has mentioned that the billions which are lying in Brussels of the Russian money, oligarch money, or whatever the money is, the Russian belonging to Russia, will be given to the to Zelensky to defend that. Already Zelensky has made, and that's the reason that he has resisted and regain the territories which Mr. Putin has actually invaded. Now, my point is very simple. Viktor Orban in Hungary is one actor that is standing shoulder to shoulder with Mr. Putin, and he's saying that, look, I will block into the 27 nations bloc of European Union to send that money to Mr. Zelensky. So this is a strange game that has been going on out there, which need to be checked, need to be monitored. And I would say again, the voices for peace are not there. Why? Why the voices of peace are not there while the drum beats are going up and up and up by building up the navy there, by building up the naval ship and all that. So all of that is creating a tension in people's mind, a tension in the region. And of course, people are relying on some sort of a peaceful solution, if that could be one, whereby the world could continue to operate. So the last scenario that you've said, Sharad, that the outcome of the war, of the peaceful talks, that has both parties will come to senses. Americans would come to senses. They're not going to be deterred by their major, mega ships and things like that. They're not going to deter. They're not going to be intimidated by all that. They're told many times. Iran has told many times they're not going to be. On the opposition side the opposite side of it, on the contrary, the determination is very strong. The missile technology is extremely strong. And over the years, they have built, since 1979, they have built an amazing technology of missiles technology, which the 12-day war with Israel has shown that they have so many of them, and they will be, not thinking twice not to use it. Anyway, that's too much is going on, the tension in the region. I would take a track with those who do believe in, using the religion conflict, because this is what exactly it is. It's a religious conflict in a broader sense that Modi has, is shaking hands with Netanyahu, because both, one is extreme ideologically RSS Hindu nation, and the other is Zionist, extreme Zionist, Israeli nation. Now, Israel itself, the concept, is an anti-Muslims since the invasion of Palestine and controlling the territory by force, by killing, by eliminating the human beings in the last, 70-odd years. Anyway, that is a big question. We're not discussing the religious conflict, but somebody has composed a beautiful song about it, and they have sent me over to see that how politicians actually use the religion for their own benefit. So sit back, relax, and listen to this particular piece of music.
ये हमको और तुमको खूब लड़ाएंगे, ये हमको और तुमको खूब लड़ाएंगे, ये कुर्सी के भूखे देश बेच खाएंगे, हाँ देश बेच खाएंगे
ये राम का नाम लेंगे रहीम को कोसेंगे ये राम का नाम लेंगे रहीम को कोसेंगे और जो भी बीच में आएगा उसका खून चूसेंगे
ये धर्म का नशा देकर तुमको नचाएंगे ये देश बेच खाएंगे ये कुर्सी के भूखे देश बेच खाएंगे हाँ देश बेच खाएंगे जाओगे मंदिर और मस्जिद में तुम लड़ते रह जाओगे मंदिर और मस्जिद में ये मलाई खाएंगे बैठ कर संसद में
ये सेठों की तिजोरी बस भरते जाएंगे और तुमको गरीबी में मार गिराएंगे ये कुर्सी के भूखे देश बेच खाएंगे
इनसे बच के रहना
ये देश बेच खाएंगे
That's a beautiful song. Somebody has sent me that to play it, and I did duly play it because in Sabach Karana, that's what it is. And how can you be protected by them? By voting them out in the next election, and that's the only way to get rid of their logic, their philosophy, and their implementation of the kind of politics this government is playing and destroying India in many ways, because India has been sold out, as we have covered in this program, to the disbalanced, lopsided deals with the US. Our farmers are suffering, and all that is happening because the tension in the world is building towards the war. And that's what we have to diffuse. We have to play our part in order to make sense of the world we live in. I mean, imagine the amount of trillions and trillions has been used in the US. He's keep sort of throwing up tariffs, sucking the blood of other nations in tariffs. And where is pouring? Pouring into the war. Because it's building up those big warships is not easy. It's cost money, to maintain, to run, and to sustain the warships there and all that. Now, the other point is that how warships how the foreign bases, this concept of foreign bases into a different country is another strange one. Why America needs to put bases in Bahrain or in Qatar and all those places, why those countries are not opposing the fact that, hey, get the hell out of here. Don't park your ships here. We don't allow you. Because they are sold out. Because they're spineless little monarchies. And Bahrain is basically the lackey state of it's hardly a state. It's a lackey second-rate state of Saudi Arabia. All those corrupted leaders of Bahrain and Qatar and all these guys are slaves of America. Why? What is the reason? You're rich in finance. You have money. Why do you need to come into the threat of, Iran will attack you? This Iran has ever attacked in the last 70 years since it came into power to any of the regional? Instead, they built the regional alliance. And in the global context, they did several conferences on the political Islamic thoughts, proximity of Islamic thoughts. In other words, in order to bring the regional forces, regional faith people, Islamic countries such as Turkey, such as Bahrain, such as Saudi Arabia, such as Iraq, Syria and all that, into the proximity of Islamic thoughts that, hey guys, we are one nation here. Why are you feeling divided and run by the fear of the fact that you will be attacked by? No, they will not be attacked instead of that. So one effect of that, building the bridges with the neighboring power is this, that they are, first of all, have refused to give their bases for attacking. But then again, they don't have a spine. So they will not, Trump is not going to ask them, hey, we are, can we use your bases? They said, we are using your bases and you have no power to stop us because we are there. So it's like old days. Remember that when Malcolm X, the movie, the Malcolm X is a beautiful film, in fact, if you see it. When the Americans have built the so-called Greater America, they didn't ask the black people to come over, and to build America after Second World War. They said, hey, black man, get down to the bottom of the ship and build. I'm taking you over to America to build the nation. That's what they did. They brought the black slaves from Africa and not asking their leaders, hey, excuse me, can I have some few black slaves and few black people to take back to the nation? So this is what Americans are. They're not going to ask the regional nation, oh, could you please use your bases? No. So that we are there, we'll use it. You can't do anything about it. Can do whatever you want to do, but you cannot stop us for doing and utilizing. But those bases have been refused. So let's see what happens if this dreadful scenario becomes the reality. Anyway, we are in the month of Ramadan, and we are still praying, fasting during the day, and it's the month of prayers, in the month of peace. In the Holy Book of Quran, the fighting in the month of Ramadan is prohibited. But if you've been attacked, you've got to defend yourself. So that rule does not apply if within this, in the next 3 weeks, the Americans would attack Iran. But most of the regional powers have said that if Iran has been attacked, we will intervene. And not only the region, China, Russia, and also Turkey has said that we will do our best to be at the side of Iran. And so the scenario is amazing. Scenario is emerging. My point is very simple, guys. Use your senses. Do not have war. Have peace. Peace and war are the two sides of the same coin. The dichotomy of peace and war is my belief in peace. Last year, I did the festival on the Ukrainian and Russian peace process, peace initiative, not peace process. But years ago, I did a 6-part series. Sometime we'll talk about that as well. The peace in Northern Ireland, and that has not been fully completed or accomplished. And I'll come back to that issue another time. But today, I'm going to play Muhammad Rafi. Muhammad Rafi has played a beautiful song about Ramzaan and the importance of Ramzaan, the beautiful month of Ramadan. And there's a story that Muhammad Rafi has actually sung that story. So I'm going to play that, and I hope you like it. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this.
सुन लो क्या रमजान की होती है अज़मत मोमिनों एक लड़का था कहीं थी उम्र जिसकी 7 साल रोजा रखने के लिए बेताब था वो नौनिहाल चांद जब रमजान का देखा तो ये माँ से कहा आरज़ू मेरी भी है रोजा रखूं रमजान का वक्त जब सहरी का हो जाए उठा देना मुझे आज रोजा मैं भी रखूंगा जगा देना मुझे माँ को आया ही नहीं बेटे की बातों का ख्याल सुबह जब बेटा उठा तो हो गया उसको मलाल फूल जैसा उसका चेहरा रंज से मुरझा गया माँ से ये रो रो के कहता था मेरा रोजा गया माँ ने जब बेटे को देखा तो कहा दिल थाम कर अब नहीं है फर्ज रोजा तुझ पे ऐ नूरे नजर बोला बेटा सुन लिया है मैंने रमजान का बयां, इस महीने में हुआ कुरान नाजिल बेगुमा, ये सुना है जाएगा जन्नत में हर एक रोजादार, हश्र के दिन पाएगा वो जलवाए परवरदिगार। रात भर रोजे की हसरत में न वो सोया जरा, वक्त सहरी का हुआ तो उसने रोजा रख लिया, खुश था लड़का आज पूरी दिल की हसरत हो गई, मैंने रोजा रख लिया मौला की रहमत हो गई। निकल आया तो सूरज नूर फैलाने लगा, होके फिर बेचैन माँ ने अपने बेटे से कहा, वक्त खाने का है कुछ खा ले मेरे नूरे निगाह, तब कहा लड़के ने रोजा तोड़ना भी है गुनाह, माँ ये बोली हर गुनाह तेरा मैं लूंगी अपने सर, कुछ तो खा ले मेरे बेटे हो गई है दोपहर। बोला बेटा कुछ भी हो रोजा न तोड़ूंगा कभी, जान दे दूंगा इबादत से न मुंह मोड़ूंगा मैं, प्यास की शिद्दत से ऐसा हाल बिगड़ा असर तक, भूख के मारे हुआ बेचैन लड़का असर तक। दिल की हरकत में कमी आने लगी, सूखी जुबान आ गई हिचकी घुटा दम और निकली उसकी जान, रो के माँ कहने लगी नूरे नजर जाता रहा, छोड़ कर मुझको मेरा लगते जिगर जाता रहा, इतने में हर सिमत मगरिब की अज़ा का शोर उठा, रोते रोते माँ ने फिर इफ्तार रोजा कर लिया, फिर बहाले जार पढ़ ली उसने मगरिब की नमाज, हाथ उठा कर ये कहा फरियाद है बंदा नवाज, दे गया बेटा मुझे दागे जुदाई क्या करूं, लुट गई है जिंदगी भर की कमाई क्या करूं। इतने में आई सदा साइल की मैं नादार हूँ।
जी मैंने ये मुद्दा अब रमज़ान की बरकत से पूरा हो गया. That means that this is a blessed, based on some sort of a real story that Muhammad Rafi has sung. It's a very old fable that we had in our tradition, and Mr. Muhammad Rafi has actually sung that for centuries, and I try to actually play that every Ramadan, because Ramadan is a very important month for the entire world, because it teaches you the self-discipline, sense of timing. Every minute is important. Every minute you spend is a barakat. Even sleeping, feeding people, having meal together is all barakat. It's all blessing. So it is an amazing month whereby you pray, you do a lot of good deeds, and your deeds will be accepted if you have done with a good intention. So anything which is Ramzan has offered, and of course, those who are fasting throughout the 30 days, and as many days as you can. If you are ill, you're not allowed. If you are medically not fit or on tablets or anything like that, or insulin, you're not allowed. But if you're fit and healthy and earning money and can look after your health and look after yourself, then it is, the fasting is prescribed for you as a compulsory, mandatory, as we call it, a compulsory wajib. and that is what it is. Because it's not very it's not very difficult these days in this part of the world, because the weather is cool and the days are shorter, and some hours you spend in sleeping anyway after the morning breakfast that you call Sahari. Sahari is this is before prayer, before 6 o'clock, that you eat a little food, and ismak, where the first crack of dawn happens, you stop eating. A lot of people eat way before that. During the night time, they eat at 2, 3, anytime you can eat. There is no restrictions since the sunset until the ismak, the dawn, as I call it. So this is the the rules of Ramadan that has been followed, and then you open it and you break it at around 6:12 or 6:15 is the time today, and it's highly recommended to open in communion at either Islamic centers, mosque, and indeed inviting guests, inviting people. Highly recommended and rewarding by feeding people, by asking people to come and they break the the fast with you. So this is a tradition that is happening. People have been fed. Hundreds and hundreds of people have been fed in homes and in mosques and Islamic centers. On the other hand, what is unfortunately happening in Indian certain cities, that they are demolishing the mosques, they are demolishing the Islamic centers, and this is very, very heartening. But that's their policy, and that's what it is. A lot of people are predicting their downfall fairly soon. Anyway, time is running out, and I shall be back same time, same place. If you tune me in at 93.9 Dublin South FM. This is your own Apna Radio, broadcasting every Thursday from 3 o'clock until, it's from 3 o'clock until 4 o'clock, and India time 8:30 until 9:30. So this is what we do, and we try to actually update you about the world affairs, particularly in the context of what is happening in India. I will be covering some other topics next week, and hopefully you shall tune me in on time at 3 o'clock at Apna Radio. Bye for now, and have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week.
ये हमको और तुमको खूब लड़ाएंगे, ये हमको और तुमको खूब लड़ाएंगे, ये कुर्सी के भूखे देश बेच खाएंगे, हाँ देश बेच